So to let you know, ladies and gentlemen out there, I'm not in control of the technology here because I'm an idiot, and I'm having to ask somebody else to switch the slides for me, so bear with me on that one. So this is the heat project, and if I could have the first slide, please. So what I'm going to do is tell you who we are, what we do, where the money comes from, the good that we do, I hope, why I think it's better to be working from the bottom up and local organizations to be doing some of this work, and at the same time, some of the many problems that we face. Next slide, please. Right, so we are a charity. Well, we're part of a local development trust, which is a charity. We've been in operation for just over 6 years. We are totally funded by grants, so a service that we provide to all households in Perth and Kinross is totally free. We're totally independent. We don't answer to any politicians. We have no commercial ties. All our advice is based on the best knowledge that we have, and it's as simple as that. Very small. There's me. I've got 2 people who do the real work, and I've got 1 person on contract who does all our very important website and social media stuff, which is increasingly important for organizations like us. Next slide, please. So what do? We provide a free home energy advice service to all households and small businesses throughout Perth and Kinross. That advice ranges from putting lids on saucepans and drawing curtains at night through to full surveys of houses to suggest how they could be improved to become more energy efficient. And we include all heating systems and electricity tariffs and things like that in the advice as well. And we go as far as advice on installation systems and the installation of small renewables, such as heat pumps and photovoltaics, that's solar energy. We help increasingly people who are on the wrong tariff or who do not understand the tariff that are on, and we try to help people to clear energy debt. And if any people that we advise are thinking of going through one of the interest-free loan or grant systems available to install insulation or small-scale renewables, then we can act as a guide through those very complicated processes. And while we have no commercial ties, we do have a sort of list of providers of services and materials who are have got better reputation in the area than others. And we pass that on, although we always advise households to get at least 2 quotes for anything they're considering doing. Next slide, please. Funding, the big issue. We are determined to remain totally independent, so we won't take sponsorship. So we look primarily for funding from charitable trusts, from government grants, that's both local and national government grants that don't have any political ties, and energy industry funds that come through grants as well. So not commercial funding, but grant funding. We are currently 100% funded as of yesterday by Perth and Kinross Council. In the past, we've been funded by the Climate Challenge Fund, which no longer exists, by Safe Deposit Scotland Trust, which is a private trust, and the Energy Redress Fund, which is an energy industry charitable trust that is voluntarily, in inverted commas, funded by the electricity industry. So there's no direct link between us and any of the companies that put money into that. That funding ended on Sunday. Again, no political ties whatsoever. We're completely independent, and we are equally critical of all. Next slide, please. A couple of case studies. So we had a referral. We work in partnership with a lot of other organisations, and there's one called Broke Not Broken, which is a poverty charity in Kinross. And the client referred to us was in a large council house with 4 small children and was on universal credit and disability living allowance, so a very low income. As it was a council house, there wasn't much structurally that we could do. But what we did was we checked what tariff they were on and what position they were in with their energy bills. They're on a tariff called Total Heating, Total Control, which is, there are equivalents throughout the country, but that's the one in the Highlands of Scotland. And it is one where part of your energy supply is totally controlled, not by you, the customer, as the title would imply, but actually by the energy company. They decide when you get cheap electricity. And even with that tariff, they were on £540 of debt. The landlord, which was the local authority, had never explained how to use the heating system or the hot water system in the house, nor had they explained about the tariff. The property had electric shower and baths, were rarely used purely because of cost. Next slide, please. So the first thing we did was we recommended switching off the immersion heater. And the reason for that was they weren't using baths and they had an electric shower, so their water demand. Sorry, I was interrupted by a sign on my screen, so I couldn't read my own slide. So all the hot water was going through immersion and they weren't using it, and that meant it was just a waste of energy. And easily that was going to save them £500 a year on their annual energy bill, just one switch. We reset all the heating appliances to run on the lower rate of Total Heating, Total Control. That was a saving of £200 because we were paying less for the electricity for space heating. We also submitted an application on their behalf to the Home Heating Fund from Scottish Government, and that was a successful application. The client, well, the energy company received £890 towards their energy bill. So as a result, the debt was cleared and the client hopefully saves money going into the future. Next slide, please. This was a very different one. This was an elderly couple in a Victorian semi, stone walls, lath and plaster, a mansard roof, which is very hard to treat. As an elderly couple, they needed the house to be hot. And also, they were quite sporty. The lady, in fact, used to be an Olympic fencer. So they used showers a lot because they're still very active. But a Victorian house, stone built, lath and plaster, as I said, it was also in a conservation area. Next slide, please. So the first thing was to try and keep the heat that they had. So internal insulation using a very expensive system called Icynene foam, which is soft foam injected behind the lath and plaster and into the roof space. Secondary double glazing, because in a conservation area, you couldn't get planning consent to change the windows. We could replace the skylights. And having got the house as energy efficient as we could, we recommended looking at a heat pump, an air source heat pump. Solar power wasn't an option because it's a conservation area. And we couldn't advise a battery because the battery they would have required to run a heat pump was just too large and too expensive. Next slide, please. So we also helped them to get an interest-free loan from Home Energy Scotland and a £9,000 grant for the heat pump. We first looked at the house. It had an energy performance certificate rating of E, A being the best. And at the cost of energy then, this was just before the worst of the price increases, or about £5,500 a year, now significantly more. Building is now at the top of the D scale and with annual bills on new energy prices of 3,300. Still a lot, but a significant saving. And if you can see the photograph, you can see that the left-hand side of the roof is all covered in snow, and the right-hand roof side is the neighbour is not. And that was just visual evidence that we'd managed to reduce the heat loss from that building. Next slide, please. So, issues for us, money, basically. We rely totally on third-party funders, and I'm an environmental scientist and a climate scientist, and I spend most of my time dealing with money, trying to find it, and then keeping the people who do give us it happy so they might give us some more. We have no security. We go from fund to fund. So at the moment, all of our funding would run out at the end of this calendar year if I'm not successful in getting any more. And yet, at the same time, we are faced with an ever-increasing demand from people facing higher and higher fuel bills. Next slide, please. That's it. So that's who we are, that's what we do, that's how we're funded, and that's what keeps me awake at night. Thank you very much.